Walking away isn't instant magic, my friends. I know many of you were told that if you just disappear, if you just go silent, they will come running back to you, begging at your feet. But here's the truth that stings. It doesn't happen overnight. You walk away, and at first it looks like they don't care at all. They're posting like nothing happened, maybe even laughing with someone else, maybe even flaunting that new relationship. And you sit there asking yourself the one question that burns in your chest. Are they really unaffected? Did I lose them for good? That fear eats at you in the silence because it feels like nothing is working. But here's what you need to understand. Silence is not like a gunshot. It's not loud, instant, or explosive the moment you pull away. Silence is a time bomb. It's planted deep in their mind, and while you can't hear the ticking, while you can't see the countdown, it's there. Every second of your silence is another second closer to the detonation. At first, they feel free, they feel powerful. But slowly, that freedom turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into doubt. And doubt, my friends, becomes regret. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't happening. I want you to think of it like planting a seed. You don't put it in the ground and expect a flower to bloom that same night. You water it, you let the sun do its work, and you wait. Silence is the soil where regret grows. And right now, while you may not see any signs above the surface, deep beneath, their mind is shifting. Every day you stay quiet, every day you refuse to chase, the seed of regret is sprouting. They just don't show you yet. And that is where most of you make the mistake. The mistake is this. You break the silence too soon. You panic. You scroll through their social media. You send that one check in text. You look for crumbs of attention because you're scared they've forgotten you. But let me tell you, folks, silence is only powerful when it's real. If you're quiet on the outside but screaming for them on the inside, they feel it. If you're absent in action but still orbiting their life digitally, they sense it. The universe only rewards silence when it's complete, when it comes from a place of indifference, not punishment. And here's the magical shift, the one thing that bends reality in your favor. You have to stop using silence as a tactic and start living silence as a truth. When you no longer need their attention, when you no longer crave their reaction, when you can sit in your silence and smile, that's when the power transfers. That's when they start to wonder. That's when they feel the absence, because you're not pretending anymore. You're becoming untouchable. My friends, this is the calm power of Stoicism. You don't beg, you don't argue, you don't rush the process. You let the silence work its delayed magic, and you trust the time bomb that's ticking in their chest. They will feel it, they will regret, and they will come back. But in the meantime, you become stronger, you become sharper, you become free. That's how you win, not by waiting for their return, but by rising so high they have no choice but to look up at you. Walking away isn't instant magic, my friends. I know many of you were told that if you just disappear, if you just go silent, they will come running back to you, begging at your feet. But here's the truth that stings. It doesn't happen overnight. You walk away, and at first, it looks like they don't care at all. They're posting like nothing happened, maybe even laughing with someone else, maybe even flaunting that new relationship, and you sit there asking yourself the one question that burns in your chest. Are they really unaffected? Did I lose them for good? That fear eats at you in the silence because it feels like nothing is working. But here's what you need to understand. Silence is not like a gunshot. It's not loud, instant, or explosive the moment you pull away. Silence is a time bomb. It's planted deep in their mind, and while you can't hear the ticking, while you can't see the countdown, it's there. Every second of your silence is another second closer to the detonation. At first, they feel free. They feel powerful. But slowly, That freedom turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into doubt. And doubt, my friends, becomes regret. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't happening. I want you to think of it like planting a seed. You don't put it in the ground and expect a flower to bloom that same night. You water it, you let the sun do its work, and you wait. Silence is the soil where regret grows. And right now, while you may not see any signs above the surface, deep beneath, their mind is shifting. Every day you stay quiet, every day you refuse to chase, the seed of regret is sprouting. They just don't show you yet. And that is where most of you make the mistake. The mistake is this: you break the silence too soon. You panic. You scroll through their social media. You send that one check-in text. You look for crumbs of attention because you're scared they've forgotten you. But let me tell you, folks, silence is only powerful when it's real. If you're quiet on the outside but screaming for them on the inside, they feel it. If you're absent in action but still orbiting their life digitally, they sense it. The universe only rewards silence when it's complete, when it comes from a place of indifference, not punishment. And here's the magical shift, the one thing that bends reality in your favor. You have to stop using silence as a tactic and start living silence as a truth. When you no longer need their attention, when you no longer crave their reaction, when you can sit in your silence and smile, that's when the power transfers. That's when they start to wonder. That's when they feel the absence, because you're not pretending anymore. You're becoming untouchable. My friends, this is the calm power of Stoicism. You don't beg. You don't argue. You don't rush the process. You let the silence work its delayed magic, and you trust the time bomb that's ticking in their chest. They will feel it, they will regret, and they will come back. But in the meantime, you become stronger, you become sharper, you become free. That's how you win, not by waiting for their return, but by rising so high they have no choice but to look up at you. And here's the part most people miss, folks. Silence isn't just about them, it's about you claiming your strength back. It's about proving to yourself that you don't need their validation, their texts, or their fake smiles online to know your worth. That's why I want you to do something bold right now. Don't just listen passively. Step into this power with me. Write it in the comments. Silence is power. Not tomorrow, not later, right now. Because when you put those words out, you're not just typing, you're declaring to the universe, I'm no longer chasing, I'm standing tall. Say it out loud too. Let your own ears hear it. Let your chest feel it. This is how you lock it in, my friends. This is how you stop being the one who begs and start being the one who is remembered. And if this truth is hitting you deep, if it feels like I just called out the battle in your head, then you owe it to yourself to press that like button and subscribe, because this is only the beginning. We are going deeper, stronger, higher. So stay with me, because the longer you hold steady, the more the silence will work for you, and the louder their regret will scream in the end. Number 1, the illusion of no reaction. They look happy, don't they? That's the first stab of the illusion, my friends. You walk away, you go silent, and then you see them smiling in pictures, laughing with friends, maybe even showing off someone new on their arm. And immediately, your chest sinks, your heart races, and you ask yourself the haunting question, if silence is supposed to work, why do they look like they're thriving without me? That thought right there is the trap. Because what you're seeing is not truth. It's performance. It's what Carl Jung would call the persona, the mask we wear to convince the world and ourselves that we are fine, even when we are broken inside. Think about it. How many times have you gone through pain, heartbreak, disappointment, and still put on a smile in front of others? How many times have you laughed at a joke while your stomach twisted inside you? That's the survival mask. They are doing the exact same thing. They're not healed. They're not unaffected. They're not as free as they want you to believe. What you are seeing is the performance of strength, not the reality of peace. Because when someone loses a person who truly cared for them, the first instinct isn't to cry, it's to pretend, to show the world, I'm okay, I'm better off. But pretending is not healing. Let me give you an image. Picture a house after a storm. The roof might still be standing, the walls might still be upright, but inside the water has flooded, the furniture is destroyed, the floorboards are rotting. From the outside, it still looks like a home. From the inside, it's a disaster. That is exactly what their so-called happiness is right now. From the outside, the smile, the new partner, the parties, they look intact. But inside, the storm has already left its mark, and your silence is the flood water seeping deeper and deeper. Now I know what you're thinking. But what if they really moved on? What if they really don't care? Let me tell you, if they truly didn't care, they wouldn't have to prove it so loudly. Indifference is quiet. Real freedom doesn't announce itself. Think about people who are truly happy. They don't rush to show it off online. They don't need to shove it in anyone's face. When someone is posting every detail of their new happiness, when they are parading someone new so quickly, that is not peace. That is proof they are trying to convince themselves they made the right choice. Psychology backs this up, folks. When a person experiences loss, the ego reacts defensively. It hates to feel wrong. It hates to admit it let go of something valuable. So what does it do? It covers the wound with distractions, with noise, with a mask of joy. Jung himself said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And isn't that what you're watching? Their soul is aching, but they're covering it with laughter, pretending the absence of you doesn't cut as deep as it does. But here's where it gets difficult, because your mind doesn't see through that mask right away. You start doubting yourself. You start saying, maybe they're better without me. Maybe my silence is a mistake. Maybe I lost them forever. That's the exact moment you want to break the silence, to reach out, to remind them of your presence. And that, my friends, is how you lose the game. Because silence is only powerful when you can withstand the illusion. It's a test of endurance, of self-control, of patience. Most people break before the silence works. They can't take the sight of the mask. But if you hold, if you let them keep wearing it, eventually the mask cracks. And when it cracks, everything comes pouring out. The fake laughs stop feeling real. The new partner starts to look like a burden instead of a trophy. The nights get longer, the mornings get heavier, and suddenly, in the quiet moments when no one else is around, your absence screams the loudest. They may fool the world, but they cannot fool themselves forever. And that is when regret takes root. Think of it like a shadow. During the day, in the bright light of distractions, the shadow is small, almost invisible. But as the day turns into evening, the shadow grows longer and darker until it's impossible to ignore. Right now, they're living in the daylight of distraction, but time always moves, and the shadow of your silence is already stretching across their life. The longer you hold, the bigger that shadow becomes, and one day it swallows every illusion they tried to build. I want you to stop believing the surface. Look deeper. Every smile you see is a performance. Every laugh is an echo. Every happy post is them trying to drown out the truth. Don't take it personally. Take it as proof. Proof that your silence is working. Proof that your absence is heavy enough that they have to act like it's not. My friends, when someone is unaffected, they don't have to show it. The louder they look, the more broken they are inside. So what does this mean for you? It means you hold your ground, you don't rush, you don't panic, you don't let their performance trick you into breaking your silence. Your silence is the medicine they didn't know they needed, and every day you stay firm, the cure seeps deeper. This is Stoicism at its finest. Control yourself, and you control the outcome. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Right now, your silence is making them face what they've buried in their unconscious. They don't see it yet, but they will. And when the mask finally falls, they'll see you in every corner of their life. They'll realize the happiness they tried to fake was just a thin layer of paint over a cracked wall. They'll feel the loss they denied, and they'll regret letting you go. That's the power of silence, but only if you believe in it long enough to let it work. So here's what I want you to do right now. Write it in the comments below. The mask will crack. Say it out loud. Let yourself feel it. Let it sink into your bones. Every illusion eventually collapses, and your silence is the weight that breaks it. Type those words, folks, because when you declare it, you're reminding yourself to stay strong. And if this message just gave you strength, if it gave you peace, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because the longer you hold steady, the more the mask crumbles, and the louder their regret will roar in the end. Number 2, silence isn't enough if you're still watching. Here's the truth, my friends. Silence isn't enough if you're still watching. Too many people think they've walked away, but in reality, they've only taken one step back. They stop texting, they stop calling, they stop showing up, but behind the scenes, they are glued to their ex's profile, scrolling every post, checking every story, waiting for a hint, a sign, a crack. And whether they realize it or not, this obsession leaks energy. It's like walking out of a room but leaving the door wide open. You may not be inside anymore, but the draft is still flowing, and they can feel it. Think about it. Haven't you felt someone's eyes on you before, even when they said nothing? That strange sense of being watched, of being monitored. Energy works the same way. When you're stalking them online, replaying their pictures in your mind, or refreshing their feed late at night, you may think you're silent, but in truth, you're still feeding the connection. And here's where the mistake lies. Silence only works when it is real silence. It's not just about what you don't say, it's about what you don't seek. Carl Jung taught that what we resist often controls us even more. If you're telling yourself, I won't text them, but your whole body aches to know what they're doing, then you're still chained. You're not silent, you're enslaved. And the more you peak, the less powerful your silence becomes, because you are confirming to yourself that they are still the center of your attention. This is why so many people complain, but I went no contact and it's not working. No, my friends, you didn't go no contact. You went quiet with your mouth but loud with your mind. That is not silence, that is self-torture. Now let's talk about mystery. What makes silence so powerful is not just absence, it's the unknown. When they don't hear from you, when they don't see you reacting, when they have no idea what you're thinking, their mind fills in the blanks. That's when curiosity starts to grow. But if you're still watching, still reacting silently, still giving yourself away through subtle likes, views, or whispers, then the mystery dies. And without mystery, there is no hunger, no obsession, no regret. Think of silence like a locked safe. If they can't peek inside, their imagination runs wild. They wonder what you're doing, who you're with, whether you even think about them at all. But if you leave the safe cracked open, if they can still sense your energy circling them, the power is gone. They don't need to imagine. They already know you're still there. And I know it's difficult. The urge to check is strong. You tell yourself, I just want to see how they're doing. I just want to see if they miss me. But ask yourself this: what do you gain from looking? Do you feel stronger? Do you feel calmer? Or do you feel weaker, emptier, more desperate than before? Every scroll through their life is like pouring water on the fire of your silence. You think you're keeping watch, but really you're smothering your own power. The hardest truth of this journey is that silence must be whole. It's not just about not speaking, it's about detaching. It's about closing the door and locking it behind you, refusing to peek through the keyhole. That is when silence transforms from an action into a force. That is when it becomes magnetic, when it pulls on them without you lifting a finger. But until you get there, until you cut not just the words but the watching, you are only halfway free. So I ask you, do you want to be halfway free, or do you want to be untouchable? Do you want them to sense that you're still orbiting their world, or do you want them to wake up one morning and feel the chill of your total absence? Because nothing haunts the mind more than someone who vanishes without a trace. That is the silence that drives regret into their bones. That is the silence that makes them chase. My friends, real silence is not easy. It demands discipline. It demands that you give up the short-term comfort of knowing for the long-term reward of power. But that's the Stoic way. You master yourself. You master the game. So let today be the day you stop watching, stop peeking, stop leaking. Close the door, walk away, and let the mystery do the work for you. Write it in the comments right now. Real silence only. Say it out loud, type it below, let it sink in. Because when your silence is whole, your power is unshakable. And if this truth hit you today, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because we're just getting started and your silence is about to become their loudest regret. Number 3, their ego needs time to crack. At first, they feel powerful rejecting you, my friends. That's the nature of ego. When they push you away, when they turn their back, when they choose someone else over you, the ego puffs up like a balloon. It whispers to them, "Look at you, you're in control. They wanted you, and you said no, you're the one who won." In those early days, they walk around with that false crown on their head, acting untouchable, feeding off the idea that your heart still aches for them. That's why, in the beginning, they can look so confident, so unaffected, almost smug. But here's what the ego doesn't tell them. The crown they're wearing is made of paper, and paper doesn't last long in the storm of silence. Silence begins to suffocate the ego slowly. Think of ego as a fire. In the beginning, it burns bright because it's fed with fuel, your attention, your begging, your emotional reaction. When you stop feeding it, the flame still looks strong for a little while. The embers glow, the smoke rises, and it seems like it can last forever. But starve that fire of oxygen, and the glow fades. That's exactly what happens when you stop giving them attention. Their ego is used to being fed by your presence, your words, your energy. When it gets nothing, it starts to collapse. The tricky part is that collapse doesn't happen overnight. It's not instant. That's why so many of you panic too soon. You walk away, and for weeks they seem perfectly fine. They even look stronger. And you start thinking, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe silence doesn't work. But remember this: ego is stubborn. It takes time to crack. At first, it resists. It flexes harder. It tells them, you don't need them. You're better off, and they believe it. But ego is not sustainable without fuel, and every day you stay silent, you take away its oxygen. Carl Jung once said, "Through pride, we are ever deceiving ourselves." But deep down below the surface of the average conscience, a still small voice says to us, something is out of tune. That's the process you are watching unfold. On the surface, they act proud, they act powerful, but deep down, the voice is already whispering. At first, they drown it out with distractions. They might post more, go out more, laugh louder, even jump into someone else's arms. But silence works like pressure on a crack in glass. Slowly, slowly, it spreads until the entire surface shatters. Ask yourself, how long can someone survive when they're addicted to validation and suddenly that supply is cut off? They can distract themselves for a time, but eventually the withdrawals hit. They look around and realize the likes, the parties, the rebound partners don't fill the same void. That's when your silence echoes. That's when the hunger sets in, not for anyone else's attention, but for yours, the attention they once took for granted. I know this waiting is hard. I know the silence feels endless, but you must remind yourself, you are not losing them in this time. You are starving their ego, and starving takes time. A tree doesn't fall the moment you stop watering it. It stands tall for a season, but the roots are dying underground, and when it finally collapses, it collapses completely. That is what their ego is going through right now, even if you can't see it yet. So, my friends, hold steady. Do not be fooled by their show of strength in the beginning. That strength is hollow. That smile is temporary. That crown will crumble. Your silence is the storm, and no ego can outlast it forever. Write it in the comments right now. The crown will crack. Say it. Type it. Believe it. Every second you remain in control, you are breaking down their illusion. And when it finally falls, they will see what they lost, and they will regret. If this message gave you strength today, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because this journey isn't about feeding their ego, it's about starving it until it collapses and rising higher while they scramble to pick up the pieces. Number 4, the magical ingredient, indifference. Walking away isn't the same as moving on, my friends. That's where most people get trapped. They think the act of leaving, of pulling back, of not texting is enough. But here's the hard truth. You can walk away 1,000 miles and still carry them in your chest. You can block their number, delete their photos, and still whisper their name in your thoughts every night. That isn't freedom. That's exile with chains still attached. And they can feel it. The energy you leak tells them, they're still mine, they still need me. That's why so many people say, I walked away but it didn't work. Because walking away is a step, but indifference is the finish line. Let's be clear. Indifference is not anger. It's not cold rage. It's not even pretending not to care. It is the calm realization that you do not need them to validate you, to complete you, or to heal you. It's the moment when your silence stops being a tactic and starts being your truth. That's the magical ingredient. That's what flips the whole dynamic. Because when they sense your silence is a performance, they feel safe. But when they sense your silence has become who you are, when they realize you no longer orbit their sun, panic sets in. Psychology tells us that humans are wired to chase what withdraws authentic emotional energy. If something is still halfway available, it loses its shine. But once it's gone, once it feels truly out of reach, the desire multiplies. Think of it like a game of pursuit. If the prize keeps lingering just within reach, it doesn't feel urgent. But the moment it disappears over the horizon, the chase begins. Indifference is that horizon. It's you walking into the distance, not to be found, not to be lured back. And that absence is magnetic. I want you to imagine it like holding a rope. At first, when you walked away, you were still gripping your end tight, even if you weren't tugging. But indifference means dropping the rope completely. No more tension, no more waiting, no more hoping. And when that rope hits the ground, they feel it. They realize you're no longer tied to them, not even in silence. That's when the regret explodes because they no longer have your energy to lean on, not even subconsciously. Now, I know what you might be asking yourself, but isn't it hard to stop needing them? Isn't it impossible to just become indifferent? And yes, my friends, it is hard. That's why so few people achieve it. It requires shifting your focus inward. It requires building a life so rich, so fulfilling, that their presence becomes optional instead of essential. It's not about forcing indifference, it's about growing into it. Like a tree that no longer needs the old soil, you plant yourself in new ground, and suddenly their shadow doesn't reach you anymore. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." If you resist missing them, if you fight it with anger, they'll still control you. But when you reach indifference, you stop resisting because there's nothing left to resist. That's the true power. It's not fire, it's not ice, it's air, untouchable, free, and everywhere at once. And here's the beauty of it. When they feel that indifference, when they sense that your silence is no longer a weapon but a state of being, that's when the tables turn. Suddenly, they are the ones questioning themselves. They are the ones scrolling, wondering, aching, because nothing is more haunting than realizing the person who once needed you doesn't anymore. That is the regret that pierces deeper than rejection itself. So, my friends, don't just walk away, move on. Don't just go silent, become free. When your silence becomes indifference, it transforms from a tactic into a magnet. And that magnet pulls harder than any words, any chase, any fight ever could. I want you to write this in the comments right now. Indifference is freedom. Say it out loud, type it, make it real. Because when you reach that point, you're no longer playing their game, you're rewriting it. And if this gave you the strength you needed today, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because the moment you stop needing them is the exact moment they start needing you. Number 5. Replacement doesn't kill your impact. They think replacing you will erase you, my friends. That's the first lie they tell themselves when they jump into something new. They hold another hand, post new pictures, laugh at different jokes, and on the surface it looks like you've been wiped away. But the truth is, replacement doesn't kill your impact. In fact, your silence makes the comparison louder, because every moment they spend with someone new, they can't help but measure it against what they had with you, and no matter how hard they try, the weight of that comparison sits heavy on their chest. Silence sharpens this effect. When you're not around, when you're not watching, when you're not fighting for attention, you become a ghost in their mind, a presence they can't touch, but also can't escape. Every smile their new gives them feels slightly off, because in the back of their mind, they're wondering how it would have felt with you. Every little habit of their replacement, how they laugh, how they argue, how they kiss, gets unconsciously compared to the memory of you. That's why rebound relationships so often feel forced. They're not built on genuine desire. They're built on escape, and escapes rarely last. Think of it like moving into a new house while the old one is still burning in your memory. At first, the fresh paint smells good, the rooms look different, and it feels like a change. But slowly, the cracks show. The walls don't hold the same warmth, the space feels empty, and every detail reminds them of what they left behind. That's exactly what happens when they try to replace you. The new might feel like fresh paint, but deep down, they're comparing every corner to the home they abandoned. Psychology backs this up. Studies have shown that rebound relationships have some of the highest failure rates because they're rarely about love. They're about distraction. The person rushing into someone new is trying to prove they've moved on, to themselves and to you. But distraction fades, and silence is the mirror they can't look away from. While they're trying to force a bond, your absence keeps reminding them you can't replace genuine connection. You can't force chemistry. You can't bury regret under new arms. I know it's hard for you to see, folks. I know watching them flaunt someone else feels like a knife twisting. You start asking, what if this one is different? What if this one finally replaces me? But I want you to breathe and see it for what it is. If someone jumps into a new relationship right after losing you, it's not proof of healing, it's proof of avoidance. And avoidance always collapses in silence. Because when the thrill wears off, when the mask of new fades, they'll still be haunted by the one who's not chasing them anymore. You. Your silence forces that haunting. It forces them to sit with the reality that no matter how much they try, they can't erase you by holding someone else's hand. You live rent-free in their mind because you stepped back with dignity, not desperation. And that's the difference. That's the power. So don't let their replacements scare you. Let them reveal the truth. The harder they try to pretend they've found better, the louder the silence reminds them they haven't. In the end, it won't be the new person they regret. It will be losing the one they couldn't replace. Write it in the comments right now. You can't replace me. Let those words become your shield, your reminder that their attempts to move on are hollow echoes. And if this truth hit you today, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because your silence is building a regret so deep, even their replacements won't survive it. Number 6. Regret comes in waves. Regret doesn't arrive all at once, my friends. It doesn't crash down like a single storm. It comes in waves. That's why, in the early days, you don't see them breaking down. Instead, you see something that almost feels cruel. You see relief. That's the first wave. They walk lighter. They breathe easier. They tell themselves, finally, I'm free. They confuse your silence with victory, as if letting you go was the right choice. And you sit there thinking, did I mean nothing to them? How can they feel relieved after everything we shared? But don't be fooled, folks. That first wave is shallow water, splashing at the surface. It doesn't last. Because the second wave always follows, and this one digs deeper. It's called curiosity. Once the initial high of freedom fades, they start to wonder. What are they doing? Who are they with? Are they missing me? Or have they already moved on? This curiosity is poison to the ego because it breaks their illusion of control. They thought you'd always orbit them, always watch, always be available. But when you hold your silence steady, you deny them proof. That denial breeds questions, and questions turn into obsession. Suddenly, every notification on their phone makes them wonder if it's you. Every new post, every update, every rumor makes them ache for confirmation. That's the second wave, and it hits harder than the first. But the third wave, my friends, that's the one that knocks them off their feet. That's regret. And regret doesn't whisper. Regret roars. It's the moment silence forces them to stop pretending, stop distracting, and face what they lost. It creeps in during the quiet nights, when the mask falls off and the noise of their distractions fades. That's when your absence echoes the loudest. That's when they replay the memories they tried to bury. That's when they realize that no matter how far they've run, no matter who they've replaced you with, there is a void that nothing else has filled. That's regret, the wave that drags them under. Think of it like standing on a shoreline. The first wave is small, almost playful. The second is stronger, pulling at their balance. But the third wave crashes with such force that it knocks them to their knees. That's how silence works. At first, they stand tall, thinking they've won. But wave after wave, their footing weakens until finally they can't stand against it anymore. The longer you remain still, the more powerful each wave becomes. And once the regret wave hits, it leaves them gasping for air, desperate for what they once took for granted: you. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." That is exactly what regret is. Consciousness forced by pain. They won't admit it at first. They won't say your name out loud. But deep in their mind, your silence has carved a space they can't ignore. And that space grows wider with every day you hold steady. So don't panic during the first wave. Don't break your silence because they look relieved. Don't lose faith when they slip into curiosity. Let the process unfold. Trust the tide, because regret always comes, and when it does, it hits harder than anything else. Write it in the comments right now. The waves will hit. Say it out loud, type it below. Remind yourself that your silence is not wasted. It's gathering strength, building force. And if this truth opened your eyes today, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because every wave is pulling them closer to the moment they regret losing you, and your silence is the tide they cannot escape. Number 7. When silence turns into power. There comes a moment, my friends, when silence transforms. At first it feels heavy, it feels like waiting, like holding your breath underwater. But then something shifts. Silence stops being an absence, and it starts becoming a presence, a powerful one. That's when they see you glowing, unbothered, harder to reach. They notice you're not sitting in the shadows anymore, you're out in the light. You're not bitter, not chasing, not sulking. You're steady, calm, and alive in your own rhythm. And that glow, that's the mark of someone who has reclaimed their power. At first, their ego tells them they'll come back. They always do, but silence keeps proving otherwise. Days pass, weeks stretch, and they realize they can't read you anymore. You've become unpredictable. You've become untouchable. That's when their curiosity, the same curiosity that started as a whisper, twists into obsession. They scroll through old photos, they replay old conversations, they try to decode every detail of who you were because they can't figure out who you've become now. The silence has shifted the question in their mind. It's no longer, did I win? Now it's, how do I get them back? Think of silence like polishing a stone. In the beginning it's rough, unnoticed, ordinary. But with time, with pressure, with patience, it becomes a gem, something rare, something valuable. That's exactly what happens to you when you hold steady. You stop looking like an option and start looking like a prize. And here's the beauty. You don't have to shout. You don't have to prove. You don't have to perform. Your silence itself becomes the proof. It tells them, louder than words ever could, I don't need you to shine. And that is what terrifies them most, because they expected you to break. They expected you to crawl back. They expected your silence to collapse under the weight of missing them. But instead, you rise. Instead, you glow. Instead, you become even harder to reach than before. That's when their obsession kicks in. They start wondering who has your attention now. They start picturing you laughing with someone else. They start imagining you moving on, and those images torment them more than anything you could ever say. Carl Jung said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." The more they resist the truth of your silence, the more it swallows them. They try to ignore it, distract themselves, deny it. But your absence grows larger in their mind, and eventually it becomes unbearable. That's when they stop feeling victorious and start feeling desperate. That's when the obsession turns into action. They don't just miss you, they need you back to silence the chaos your absence created. But here's where you must stay strong. Power is only real if you hold it. If you let them lure you back too soon, you break the spell. The secret is to stay calm, stay steady, stay glowing. Let them see you living, not waiting. Let them feel the weight of their mistake every time they remember your silence. Because the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop proving, is the moment they realize the game flipped. They didn't win. They lost the one who can't be replaced. So, my friends, let your silence become your crown. Wear it with calm dignity. Let them see you, not as bitter, not as broken, but as untouchable. That is when the regret turns sharp. That is when the obsession burns, and that is when they come back. Not because you begged, but because you became too powerful to ignore. Write it in the comments right now. Silence is my crown. Say it out loud, type it, claim it. Because when you embrace this truth, you stop being the chaser and start being the one they chase. And if this spoke to your soul today, press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because your silence has already turned into power, and soon it will turn their confidence into regret. Number 8. They always circle back. They always circle back, my friends. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week, but sooner or later, the path they chose will lead them right back to the place they thought they could leave. And why? Because every runner returns to where they once felt safe. You were their safe place, their soft landing, their mirror that showed them they were worthy of being loved. They can run into distractions. They can run into new arms. They can run into noise and chaos. But eventually, when the dust settles, they realize none of those places gave them what you did. Think of it like a traveler who leaves home chasing adventure. At first, the new city excites them. The lights dazzle. The noise fills their head. But as the nights grow longer, as the novelty fades, the longing creeps in. They start to miss the familiarity of home, the way the walls held their secrets, the way the rooms carried their laughter. And no matter how far they roam, something in them pulls back toward the door they once closed. That is what happens with people who thought they could leave you behind. Home doesn't vanish just because they ran away, and in their quiet moments, you will always feel like home. Psychology tells us that unfinished emotional stories haunt the mind. Humans crave closure. We want to tie up every thread, answer every question, seal every wound. But silence denies them that closure. You walked away without begging, without pleading, without giving them a scene they could replay to convince themselves it was final. Instead, you left a story half-written. And unfinished stories pull harder than anything complete. That's why, even years later, people wake up thinking about the one they never got closure from. Silence guarantees you stay unfinished in their mind, and that's why they return. Not out of convenience, but out of compulsion. At first, they'll try to fight it. They'll tell themselves, "It's over. I moved on. I'm happy now," but their own mind won't let them rest. A song will play, a scent will drift by, a place will remind them of you, and suddenly they'll feel that tug. That tug grows stronger each time until resisting it feels impossible. That's when they circle back, not because they want to, but because their own psychology forces them. I know what you're thinking, but what if too much time passes? What if they forget me? My friends, you don't forget someone who impacted your soul. Time doesn't erase connection, it magnifies it. The longer they try to bury it, the heavier it becomes when it resurfaces, and silence ensures it always resurfaces, because they never got to finish the story with you, and unfinished chapters demand to be read again. That's why you don't chase, that's why you don't panic, that's why you don't beg. You let silence hold the story open, unfinished, powerful. You let it haunt them in the background of every decision, every new relationship, every empty laugh, because deep down they know the truth. Nobody gave them what you gave them. Nobody matched the safety, the connection, the fire you carried, and they'll never stop wondering, what if I never should have let them go? That thought alone is enough to bring them back to your door. So don't break the silence. Don't hand them closure. Let them circle back, as they always do, because the weight of regret will drag them toward you eventually. Your job is not to wait. It's to rise, to grow, to shine, to build a life so strong that when they return, they realize the safe place they abandoned has become a fortress. So, my friends, here's the truth. Silence isn't weakness, it's power. And the longer you hold it, the louder their regret grows. They can run, they can pretend, they can even replace, but the story always circles back to you. Stand tall, stay calm, and let silence do what words never could. If this message gave you strength today, press that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Until then, remember, your silence is their regret, and your peace is your crown.